let's talk now about the systems, the structures that we serve in, either in our universities like Dr. Mason or in our workplaces. I mean, how are they getting adjusted? How are the systems and structures getting adjusted, or are they trying to adapt, or are they trying to become flexible in order to accommodate the contemporary interests of diverse groups in this context of culture, multiculturalism, and language? What would you say about the systems and the structures? Are they revolving or evolving in the way that can accommodate the diverse interests that are coming at them? What is your view about the systems or the structures that we are all serving under? Anybody wants to go ahead and
I'd like to jump in.
Please go.
And even though it's a system, it's those individuals in the systems, the individuals in the leadership positions, they're the ones who have to understand about their developmental stage, where they are in that intercultural competence stages. So just like my boss has told me, Dion, just go find us some initiatives that we need to implement, and then everything would be great. And if I found them the initiatives and brought it to them and they're in a polarization or denial mindset, what would happen to those initiatives? So their mindset has to change. They need to get to acceptance and adaptation where they can appreciate the difference in cultures and know that each culture is just as rich, just as unique as their own, and they have to accept that. So it doesn't matter the building. It's those leaders that are at the center. What mindset are they in? Do they believe birds of a feather flock together, so they only hire their own people who look like them, talk like them, same language, same sound, they went to the same school, parents lived in the same neighborhood? There's a lot of that where it's like they can't see past that. And when you're a minority or the non-dominant, they bring you in, but you're in the mailroom, you're in housekeeping, you're in food services, you're not in a leadership position. So those
even though you have the qualifications and the competence to be in the boardroom, you are kept in a different room where your expertise is not exploited. Honorable, I see you nodding your head rather vigorously. Culturally, I could understand that to be agreement, though I understand it. So over to you. It depends.
Yeah, I was actually I'm just writing down so many things as well too, because I just feel so honored to be with so much academia at the table, and as a person who sits in a leadership role, especially, I love this kind of weedy discussion, because at our level, it's not always possible. You know, to Dr. Mason's point, you know, you want to make it as complex and as complicated as possible, I think is what you said. But when you're dealing with policy, you're not always able to go into those weedy spaces, because you're creating policy that has to embrace as much of the public as possible. So one of the things, I think it kind of goes back to a little bit about what we were talking before, but you were talking, Ben, about systems and structures. Everything is evolving, and it's evolving quickly. And those of us who are not willing to get on board will be left behind. And that percentage of people, shame on them. In all honesty, it is about moving forward. It's about being able, I hate the word tolerance. It just rubs me in so many of the wrong ways. And Dion, you were talking about acceptance, and it was almost like 12-step program, you know, of going through denial and acceptance and all of these. But actually, when folks are learning about new things, even whether it's temporarily or whether it's something you bring into being who you are as a human being, it takes time, I think, to mold and develop. One of the things that we're working on in our ministry is culturally, like we've put up on February 6th is the no tolerance for female genital mutilation. It's a very difficult topic to talk about. And you were talking, Ben, about, and I think maybe it was actually Bjorn, you were talking about culture versus traditions and all of these kinds of things, and how it plays into that discussion. When you talk about honor beating, honor killing, child marriage, things that are from the patriarchy of my own culture, these are very, very difficult discussions to have. But what I'm realizing is that if I'm willing to have the discussion, I'm willing to open up that world for that discussion, we're able to have that discussion. It's not an easy one. And sometimes it's about proclaiming a day. Sometimes it's about having leadership and having those discussions that are difficult. But I'll tell you, like when I'm able to learn from folks like you, understand the language better, which is constantly evolving. And I think that you're right, it becomes complicated, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. And depending on your audience and who you're speaking to, in order to bring them on board and to be inclusive and to bring them into a conversation that they might not normally be part of, if we can move away from polarization. As a politician, politicians work in the space of polarization. It works for elections. It works for so many different things. But if we who have these positions have the ability to look at it from a less polarizing space, to be able to engage with those beautiful populations that we have the privilege to engage with, to make sure that they have access to the things that we need. And so, for example, in healthcare in particular, for when we're looking at First Nations or people who are visible minorities, there's many issues that are there. So how is it that we look at that from a policy perspective? And then how do we lead by example in order to make sure that people are seeing their leaders leading with this openness, leading with the ability to have discussions outside of the norm, and being able to bring that into structures so the structure is flung open, because we won't see legitimate changes in the structure until we demand that. Personally, right. For me, I ask those questions all the time. I ask the questions like, what are you doing to engage with, women who have children, especially after COVID? We know that people, it could be, anybody in the family who is staying home potentially to be the caregiver can work from home now. 9 to 5 doesn't exist anymore. There has to be the ability to look beyond the status quo of what we've had, to able to bring those traditions and that culture into a new space, to really move forward and be as inclusive as possible, because really the economy, the ability to move forward, to nurture the beautiful people that we want to attract to Canada is going to be dependent upon how we evolve and how open we are to changing what we're used to.
This is wonderful. You and Dion Sinclair, Honorable, are here. You are shattering and destroying certain notions I carry. You say you don't like the word tolerance. I am in the UN. I think we even have a Tolerance Day, World Tolerance Day or something. Beyond, you want to say something? You also, they're also saying with birds of the same feather do not necessarily flock together, and you are just destroying all these notions I have about some words of wisdom that I have carried with me. Beyond, over to you.
Yeah, I also reacted on the wording, because those are two words that we use a lot, or we abandon them a lot: respect and tolerance. If we have 30 guys, normally guys, I work with a female team too, but mostly with guys, in the same locker room, respecting them is not good enough. Tolerating them, that's almost like a negative. Who am I to tolerate what other people, how other people are? Was it Diane who said welcoming and appreciate? Those are the two words that we need to understand. We have to appreciate what each player can bring to the team, not tolerate him or respect him. What I do respect is the rights of each person. I can't respect every person. I cannot tolerate every person even, but I can respect the rights of that person.
Wow.
And it's not rights that someone has. It's rights that we share. And as you know, sharing is much more about giving than taking. And before I make sure that everyone else have their rights, I cannot expect that I can benefit from those rights myself. So the words we talk, those are my rights. No, those are our rights. And you have to make sure I can appreciate or I can benefit from them just as well as I need to make sure that you can benefit from them. And I don't tolerate you. I appreciate you if you bring something, but I respect your rights to have your opinion or all the other human rights that that you work with every day, I hope, in New York.
You, Dr. Mason, I'm going to come to you, but my mind is getting overblown with all this. As I said, in the United Nations, we talk about respect, tolerance, or empowering women, and we say all these things, and we think we're on the right track. Right now, even from beyond alone, I'm seeing that to tolerate somebody means you hate something about them, but you're just going along. And the new word, it's more precise. And my heart is leaping for joy to say, look, we may have differences, but I can welcome you, I can appreciate you, I can engage you, I can involve you, and then Dion says we can share. And share, I think it was either Honorable Ahir or Dion Sinclair who said access to facilities, which means health facilities, educational facilities, and all that. Dr. Mason, your thoughts on the structures and the systems that we have to work within. Dion is saying all these things are not some metallic inordinate items that are just there. It is human beings, it is leaders. What is your perspective?
Yeah, so what everyone has said so far really resonates with me. And this brings me back to the central point of my last comment, which is language, because the language we use, right, informs our thoughts inform our language. And so it comes back to a question for me of how are we measuring diversity? And how are we measuring diversity outside of the social constructions we can point to very easily, such as gender and race, right? And if we're talking about true diversity, then this idea that we might hire people who look like us, who sound like us, etc. But that all speaks to the idea and assumption and presumption that people who look like us are exactly like us, right? Aren't different in profound and significant ways. Mm. And it also points to this idea or popular misconception that people who don't look like us don't think like us, right? Or aren't like us in profound and significant ways. And so how can we breach this gap that many of us are pointing toward here in the language, even the very language that we use in an effort to be more liberatory, to be more inclusive, right? To be more cognizant transgressors in a way, to really honor and be able to recognize differences that matter, similarities that matter, and unite and I guess build a table around those recognitions, in addition to recognizing and honoring actual differences, right? Instead of the differences that we simply perceive or assume to be there that might not actually be there. Because wow. I think that time and time again, especially in American society, you see all of the controversies that are going around about anti-racist discourse in particular. It is very much us versus them. And everyone, no matter what side of the equation you're on, everyone believes that they are right. And everyone discounts what the other person says simply because they are perceived as the them, right? They are perceived as being wrong. But at the end of the day, it takes a lot of practice, right? Sit with ideas that we disagree with. Yeah. And to not just tolerate them, as you guys are speaking so eloquently about, but to embrace them in a way, to see value in them even, right. You know?